Where is Sean's Markle?
Sean's Markle is not attending today.
Oh, who's filling his place?
Oh, if you would just be quiet, you find out. New Beginnings Toastmasters Club, please come to order. Welcome to New Beginnings Toastmasters. I will now kick off our meeting by turning over. Who's doing the invocation?
Tammy Adama.
All right. I will turn the lectern over to Tammy Adama to kick us off with our invocation.
Hello, everyone. Tonight, I picked 3 quotes that I thought were excellent for our meeting. Spread love everywhere you go. Let no one ever come to you without leaving happier. And that's by Mother Teresa. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. And that's by Steve Jobs. Here is one that I find very relevant to volunteering for roles and for leadership positions in Toastmasters. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and learn. And that's from Benjamin Franklin. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster, or Miss Toastmaster of the evening.
Hello, everyone. Let me turn my camera on. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to our New Beginnings Toastmasters meeting. I am so excited to see what we have going on today. This meeting today is going to be divided into 3 portions. The first portion will be our speech portion, followed by our table topics, and then we're going to sum it up with our evaluations portion. Now, every meeting must have a general or someone in the helm of general, so I'm going to call upon our general evaluator, who is going to be Mr. Sandeep Rani. Sandeep, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. So I will be the general evaluator for the evening. And as the general evaluator, I will be evaluating the entire meeting as a whole from the moment the speeches are started till the very end. So as a general evaluator, it's my role to introduce my helpers. I have few helpers who are going to help me. And the first helper is going to be the timer for today. And so can I ask the timer to please introduce himself?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster Sandeep and fellow Toastmasters and guests. As a timer, I will be timing the table topic speakers, formal speeches, and the evaluations. I will also alert each speaker of the time that they have using the green, yellow, and red cards. So green, yellow, and red. Hopefully the colors are coming through. So for table topic speakers, I will be holding up the green card at 1 minute. This is usually a 1 minute speech that will go no more than 2 minutes. So at 1 minute, 30 seconds, I will raise the yellow card. And then at 2 minutes, I will raise the red card. For our main event speeches, which will be timed from 5 to 7 minutes in length, at 5 minutes, I'll raise the green, 6 is the yellow, and at 7 minutes, I will raise the red card. Now to keep in mind, green is your minimum target, yellow is right about where you want to be, and red will unfortunately disqualify you for the event. Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. That was a wonderful introduction of the timer rule. So next, I would like to introduce my grammarian and accountant, and that would be Asha Zar for today. So, Madam Asha, can you please introduce the role of grammarian and accountant?
Makes me sound so old, which I am. And yes, I would be happy to Toastmaster General Evaluator Sandeep. My grammarian tip for the day is let's please remember as best we can to make pronouns match. I know a lot. Got it. Did everyone hear that, or is it only myself, the recording in progress?
Everyone heard it.
Oh, okay. Well, very well. A lot of times in casual conversation and sometimes in written language, we'll hear people, instead of using you and he, she, it, or they'll say I and her, or she and me. And it's really nice to keep all of that agreeing with each other, as well as using me, us, you, and him, her, them. So it would be, again, that's just a little grammatic thing that I didn't hear much of growing up, but since coming to the East Coast, I hear newscasters jumble that up. So it would be great if we could just keep that in mind while we're speaking, maybe not in the speeches, but at least in our speeches and table topics. I will be listening and counting already for moi, yours truly, for ahs, so's, and any words that are filler words, such as you like, etc. Now that etc. itself is one. I'm rambling. Let me zip it onto the next person. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. That was a very elaborate and clear explanation of that role. So next, I would like to invite the Listen Up and Word Master today, and that would be Tammy Atama. So, Madam Toastmaster, would you please introduce the role?
Can you give me one moment since I just got this role? I'm
Sure.
looking for a word. Okay, so our word of the day will be fantast, and it's a visionary or dreamer. Fantast. And as the listen up role, I will be listening to each of you very carefully and noting things that you have said or writing down questions. And later on, I'll get to quiz you on how well you've been listening. Back to you, Miss Toastmaster or General Evaluator?
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. So now I would like to hand over the meeting back to the Toastmaster of the day.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. Okay, as promised, we're going to begin this meeting with the first portion, which is our speech portion, starting with our distinguished Toastmaster, Mr. Lee Walker. Mr. Lee Walker will be, and let me pull up my agenda so I can give you the specifics.
Point of order, I'd like to, we should describe table topics.
Mr. Lee Walker is going to be giving a Pathways Leadership Development L1 icebreaker. This will be a 4 to 6 minute speech, and the speech title is called Lee's Roommate. Lee's Roommate, Lee Walker. You have the floor, sir.
Fellow Toastmasters, those of you that have known me for probably as long as this club has been in existence, or when you joined the club, maybe perhaps as a newer member, I know I've lived in Virginia Beach my whole life. I grew up here. I'm still here. I work here, and I did go away for college to Randolph-Macon in Ashland, Virginia, and then came back. So over the years, the past 20, 21 years, I've moved around different places here in Virginia Beach. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those places I've lived, or people I've lived with, people I've met, things I've done. So a few years after graduating college, I decided to move in with a JC friend of mine. Those of you who know me for a while know I was involved with the Virginia Beach JCs, a community service organization. And I met a lot of people, met a lot of friends through the years. And a few of them are going to come up tonight, or names of those individuals. So I made a decision to reach out to one of my JC friends, Eileen, that lived in Chesapeake Beach or Chicks Beach, offshore drive and Pleasure House Road. She needed a roommate, and I knew her for a few years in the JCs, and I knew her boyfriend, Greg, at the time. And we talked and worked it out with Greg. Everything was good. We're friends. We've known each other a while. Worked on several projects together. And so I moved in with Eileen. A little more than a year later, Greg and Eileen get married. I was invited to their wedding and all those things. But then I was like, okay, I need a roommate. But my JC friends helped me out, and Eileen's friend, Carrie, moved in. Eileen and Carrie originally from New Hampshire. They grew up in New Hampshire, and I guess they came here to Virginia or Virginia Beach for jobs after college, or a few years after college. So I was living with Carrie for a while, and she was dating another JC, Rob, and I knew Rob Friel. We had been friends for a while. And come about a year or two later, they get married. So I'm like, okay, I got to find another roommate. So then I get in touch with another JC friend of mine, Sandy, who I'd met in the JCs for a while. And we had a mutual friend, Jack, who kind of helped us out, worked us out. And so I was still living at Chicks Beach off Pleasure House Road in the same condo complex this period of time, these period of years. So Sandy moves in, and Sandy and I lived there for a few years. But one thing I've kind of left out is my landlord at the time was Craig Haynes. And Craig is actually in the Virginia Beach Toastmasters Club and been in the club for several years. And I didn't know that Craig was in Toastmasters at the time till a handful of years later. I saw his name pop up on Toastmaster events or competitions or speech contests or different things. And I was like, man, when am I ever going to run around and meet Craig? I mean, I deal with him as a landlord, but we never talked about Toastmasters till we finally hooked up together in the same club. But so Sandy, after a few years, decided that she wanted to change jobs, and move away. She wanted to get back closer to her parents that live in Florida. So she made the decision to move down to Alabama and Mobile. She had lived there before because she went to University of Iowa for college and was already familiar with that area. And, well, that's in New Orleans in Louisiana, but it's all kind of close. And she was familiar with Mobile and Alabama. So she made the decision to go there. So I was like, okay, I need another roommate. And then my friend Mike, who was also in the JCs, his girlfriend at the time, Allison, was in the Norfolk JCs. And I knew Allison a little bit, but we sat down and talked and worked it out. So I moved in with Allison. And she lived off Newtown Road and Diamond Springs Road. But at the time, I didn't know that one of my Toastmaster friends, Sarah, who's in the Virginia Beach Toastmasters Club, lived in that same condo complex at the time, but I didn't meet Sarah till after I moved a few years later and joined the Virginia Beach Club. And then Allison came up with the decision to change jobs. She wanted to move out of the area, so she moved down to Texas, Austin, Texas, and decided to work for Cochlear selling the air plants. She had been working at CHKD doing something similar to that and just needed a change. So then I needed another roommate, and things were kind of coming up empty for me with my JC friends. I'd been moving around with different ones. Some of them were getting married, and so I reached out to my church, and I got in touch with a friend of mine through my pastor, or friend of my pastor's friend, and so I moved in with him, and it really wasn't a good situation. But as I knew what happened one of my JC friends called me up, Jack, and I brought up Jack earlier with Sandy. He actually lived a few streets away in the same neighborhood in Windsor Woods. So he's like, well, I'm going to be going out of the country. I've been going to be deployed. I need you to just house sit for a few months. So I did that. And time was ticking quickly there because I knew Jack was coming back and I had to move out of his bedroom and do something by the time he came back. Well, I got a call from another longtime JC friend, Karen. I ended up moving in Karen's house and actually helped Karen move into her house in 2000. So I never thought I'd be living in that house, but I lived there 10 years. And then Karen and her boyfriend, Rick, give me the news that they're getting married. So I had to move out. As you know, I've working at another restaurant now. I worked at Charlie's, but I'm now working at Shadowlawn Eats in Virginia Beach. And one of my JC friends, George, is the owner. And he just moved in the last couple of years to a house just right down the street from the restaurant. So he's like, why don't you just rent a room? So I checked it out, worked it out with George. And so now I live renting a room from George. So I'm just really thankful all these years, all the people I've met through my JC connections. And I've had good, reliable, trustworthy roommates to live with and have a decent life with the roommates. Mr. Toastmaster or Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Mr. Walker. Like you, I have traveled to and fro. When I left Norfolk, I told my dad I would never come back to Norfolk. But from there, I traveled from Norfolk to Hampton, Hampton to Arlington, Virginia, Arlington, Virginia to Greenbelt, Maryland down to Orlando, Florida back up to Philadelphia. When I found out I had a brain tumor, it took me back to Hampton and then back to Norfolk. My dad said, I thought you was going to never come back. And I said, I didn't have any plans to, but of course my plans aren't God's plans. So I arrived back here in Norfolk, Virginia. So and along those ways of traveling, I've met some wonderful people, some funny people, and I've met some darn near crazy people. So, my experience runs the gambit. So I know how it is when you connect with different people and how that can be. So great speech, Lee. So now we want to set the clock for 1 minute so we can allow for evaluations. If you want to send Lee a message about his speech, you can do so by clicking on, if you take your mouse and move it over his video, you will see a blue box with an ellipsis or 3 dots. Click on that, you will see chat drop down. Click chat, and then you can send Lee a private message about his speech. All right, that indicator means that the time is up. Our 1 minute is over. Fingers off of the keyboard. Now we want to call upon our second speaker for this evening. This will be delivered by Mr. Robert Riggs. He is going to give a prepared speech using the Pathways guidelines. His pathway is visionary communication with L4 elective questions and answers session. It will be a 15 to 20 minute speech, and the project title is called What It's Like Hiking the Appalachian Trail with Pictures. What It's Like Hiking the Appalachian Trail with Pictures. Mr. Robert Riggs, you have the floor now, sir.
Welcome, everybody, to an Applebee's in Connecticut. Why am I at an Applebee's in Connecticut? Simply because I'm hiking the Appalachian Trail. There's no other reason to explain that. The fact that I decided to take a car ride over to Connecticut from New York to hike the Appalachian Trail. And that's what I'm about to talk to you about today. I am actually hiking the Appalachian Trail ever since about April 6th. And I'm here to tell you what it's like to do that. There's lots of experiences, lots of crazy things that I've actually gone through hiking the Appalachian Trail. And everybody said, well, when are you going to do a speech about not just your experience, but show us some pictures? Well, here's an actual speech with pictures, what it's actually like to do the Appalachian Trail. There's lots of details here, so I can't tell you everything. But what I can tell you is that it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of places, a lot of people, not a lot of pawed creatures that I get to see along the way. And definitely a few paths. If you are interested, please feel free to ask some questions at the end. I'd say hold for now, but at the very end, please feel free to ask any questions you have about the Appalachian Trail or my experience. So let me start off by saying, hey, I decided to do this maybe, I don't know, a year and a half ago. I really decided many, many years ago, but I got serious about a year and a half ago. And I started on April 6th. And I had a few pictures from then, and as you can see from my gut, I was a little more portly at the time that I started the Appalachian Trail. And this is about April 8th or April 9th when I was standing over one of the beautiful views in Georgia, just staring at a friend of mine named Jabril. He took a picture of myself and my then girlfriend, now fiance, Brenda, and collectively we decided, okay, this is the perfect moment to take a stop, just take a nice breather, look out on the beautiful, vast trees like that, and just enjoy the experience. You have a lot of chances out there, not just when you start out as being the Appalachian Trail. We also have some other things along the Appalachian Trail, like, hey, trail magic. Trail magic is a fantastic experience where you have people who say, okay, I want to go ahead and just give back. These two individuals decided to come out on a Thursday at 10 a.m., 11 a.m., and just give out food and drink and beverage and whatever they could just to hikers, because they said, you know what? These people are doing their absolute best to try to go through this experience. They just wanted to give back. So this woman on the left spent $30 or $40 at a Dollar Tree and said, you know what? I just want to give back as much as I can. So she did. This is something you see daily. This right here is something else in there. I actually also saw this gentleman. Anybody hear me?
Yes, now.
Okay, I will, unfortunately, another application of being on the trail is that you have a lot of unstable internet. So hold on, even in an Applebee's. So hold on one second. So one thing that you have when you go out on the trail is different people. Hopefully you saw this the last time, but I actually have people like this who are trail angels. They give out free food. You also have people like this. This is somebody who you pay a little bit of money. He puts you in the back of his truck. You literally sit in the bed of his truck and he drives you to and fro. About $1 a mile. It's a reasonable choice, especially if you have to ship some things home or just get from point A to point B, maybe to a food resupply. This is what you would call not a taxi service, but a shuttle service. There's a lot of shuttle services out there. And some people just as trail angels say, you know what, I can give you a ride. What the heck? This is the first shuttle driver I ever had. Now, obviously, there aren't just people on the trail. There are paths like this. Kind of a gorgeous looking place. You just begin your day and you look at this nice green tunnel. I almost said, not every tunnel was this beautiful, but every once in a while, you're just like, you know what? This is only something you see in books or fantasy tales. I really enjoyed it. These are things that I saw enough of that I always felt the need to take pictures of things like this or like this. As you can see, Brenda, this is one very foggy, rainy morning. She's very happy, just all warm in her nice little jacket in the middle of April on a mountain, probably about 4,000 feet above sea level. She's super, super happy, as you can see. But I love this picture because it's very ominous, very much about the blend of nature and everything like that. And this was actually, in the beginning, this was the very first, about 5 days, the very first major point you get to the trail. This is actually where a lot of people quit. This is about 32 miles in. As you can see, most people throwing their shoes up and just said, I'm done, and just chuck everything up. This is one of the first major points where you really see a lot of people just start to thin the herd. And of course, let's not forget there are interesting creatures. Donna would love to cuddle up next to this one right here. There's lots of fuzzy creatures like this one. This must have been about 6 feet long. Very enjoyable. Actually, you see these almost every day. These are just regular old black snakes. Another thing you also see outside of the trail is a lot of very, very small southern towns. I actually got a quick question for you. What events would exist only in the Southern Olympics? Building Dollar Generals. I can tell you that I saw a lot of Dollar Generals in and around these towns for sure. There's lots of interesting places to see on the Appalachian Trail and definitely in the towns that you go through on the Appalachian Trail as well. Finally, you will see mice. You won't just see black snakes or Dollar Generals. You will see lots and lots of mice, sometimes in the shelters. I actually had a friend of mine named Jabril Doyle. His nickname was Dilly Dally. Everybody gets a trail name. His was Dilly Dally because it took him forever to get out of camp. His very first night at camp, in his shelter, he killed not one, not two, but 23 mice in one night because they kept eating at his food, at his socks, his sleeping gear. So he killed all of them and then they put them in the fireplace. And of course, that's what they did for fuel. But of course, the mice were dead at that point. Either way, this is a very common occurrence, believe it or not, along the trail. Now, after I started out and I really got adjusted with this whole hiking thing for a week or two, I started walking north, even beyond Georgia, and realizing certain milestones that I would hit. Well, here's 100 miles. This is me doing my favorite pose, of course, just the side angle, saying, yes, this is my Vanna pose. But mostly, it's me just expressing how much enjoyment I got out of hiking the first 100 miles. I'm thinking to myself, I've only got 2,100 to go at this point, right? I've got a lot more in since then, but this is my first 100. You'd be surprised how many people quit before the first 100. And I continue to see other views. This one, I believe, is south of the Smoky Mountains, but this is very similar to what you're going to see overall. A lot of a lot of ravines, a lot of hilly areas, a lot of smoky, above the clouds, in the clouds, below the clouds moments. You're going to see all these different gorgeous things that you often only see in pictures, but you're seeing in real life. Often it takes 2 hours to hike up a mountain just to see this. And you're saying to yourself, this is all I get to see after 2 hours of hiking. I know that my fiance said that once or twice, but I always love these views. This is perfect. Rolling hills with green. I'll hike. Yeah, Donna's saying she doesn't like it, but honestly, I love this kind of picture any day. This actually is in the Smokies right here. This was about a day ahead behind the peak of the Smokies. And sometimes you have these clouds a little dark. You're thinking, is it going to rain? You become very aware of when it does and does not rain when you're hiking the Appalachian Trail. But sometimes it's unavoidable. So you just enjoy the experience. Just enjoy walking around, looking at different views. Even if it's going to rain, you say, screw it. I'm going to get wet. Can't do anything about it. Just so you can see this beautiful view. Here's an example of a beautiful path that I actually saw in the Smokies. This right here, I forget what this is called to the left and the right, but you see these really wonderful flowers. And this is a stony path going down to a river where we could collect water. And of course, you walk back up. Who here has ever seen a fantasy novel or some form of kid's book and they've seen a path like that and drawn out? This is exactly the kind of stuff that you see every day. And of course, this right here is about 2 hours north of the Smoky Mountains Peak, or 2 hours south of the Smoky Mountains Peak. All of a sudden, the terrain goes from leafy, greeny trees to very piney trees, just like that. The terrain changes instantaneously. Why? Because you've gone from 4,000 feet to 6,000 feet. This is almost 6,600 feet at this point. So the terrain naturally changes. You see all these mossy logs, very different. And this right here is the highest point on the Appalachian Trail. As you continue to walk north, you have more and more of these. You can see more of these piney trees. This is when we were above the clouds one morning. Yes, you can hike far and long enough that you can get above the clouds. It almost feels like heaven, or at the very least, you feel like you can touch heaven with your hands above your head and below your head. It really is kind of cool. Sometimes it just feels misty and wet and muggy. I don't know. To me, it just felt like getting an air bath. There are other creatures if you walk north, like this little turtle. Very, very cute. Very, very endearing. You find a lot of little creatures. And because it's so wet, you might even find a frog a time or two. I find these almost every single day now. In the beginning, I didn't find them as much, maybe because it was cold, but now almost every day I get at least 1 or 2 or 3 frogs that just hop along my little path. Hop along, little froggy. Eventually, things started thinning. I started out, I was walking north, and finally the crowd started thinning. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of people started quitting. You saw the tree of quitters. They quit, so they quit. So that's what they call it, quitters, right? There was even a guy who quit within the first like 120 miles and started a brewery called the Lazy Hiker Brewery. And that's an example of the kind of people who say, you know what, it's not for me. Okay. So they do other things. Some people literally quit because it's either injury, money, family. There's lots of reasons, but not everybody makes it. Most people don't. As a matter of fact, about 75% of the people don't make it. This event right here was actually trail days. This occurred in early May, and this is only about 10 to 15% of the actual tents that were at trail days. Multiply that by about 5 to 10, and that's the actual amount of tents that you saw at trail days. It was a massive amount of people. That's not the amount of people you see on the trail today. Oh, no, no, no. You see far less. So there's a much thinner crowd. Matter of fact, if you look to the left, you'll see yours truly. Now, I did thin my stomach in particular. I did manage to lose weight, so I was thinning in that regard. But the gentleman on the right and the gentleman at the bottom are no longer on the trail. In fact, the guy who killed all the mice, that's the guy right there in the middle. That's Jabril Dilly Dally Doyle. That's his trail name. Everybody's called him Dilly Dally because it took him forever to get out of camp. I actually can remember back on a Saturday, there was a total of about 14 to 20 of us. And they were all in camp because it was a really rainy day. Well, of the 14 that I either hiked with or hiked near, only about 4 of us are left on the trail. A lot of people just can't make it or choose not to make it. But instead of just the crowd thinning, if you do stick around, you will thin as well. I've actually eaten my way to lose 30 pounds. If you look on the left, there's me eating Mexican, probably for the 5th time eating food that day. There's me eating a turkey leg ravenously just because I can. There's even a Kit Kat milkshake. And I like Pringles. I love Pringles. I've discovered they're by far my favorite chip, especially on the trail. I was so hungry, I tried to eat the Pringles vending machine. Yes, I tried to eat a Pringles vending machine. So there is something that occurs. You have less people, and the people who stick around, those people thin very quickly. Just 2 days ago, I met a woman who started on April 2nd. She has lost 40 pounds since she's been on trail. 40 pounds. She wasn't even that big when she started, but she's like an Amazon woman now. Just, all muscle, no fat. And as you can see, none of these people are fat at all. They're all eating, we're all rejoicing, we're all having a great time, we're all walking the trail. None of them have that much fat on them at all. Another thing that happens within the crowd is all of a sudden you start to get away from these mountainous North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Southern Virginia areas, and you get to like the middle states. Oh shoot, my internet's unstable. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hopefully you guys can hear me. Okay, good. So as you continue north, you also see that in the middle states, other things start to thin, like the path. Many times you get these open fields, these beautiful fields that happen throughout the actual crowd, through the actual forest. And a lot of times you say to yourself, like, okay, where did this, like, why is this all of a sudden happening? Why couldn't I get this earlier? Well, it turns out that what was 3, 4, 5, 6,000 feet before above sea level is now only about 1,000, 2,000. So as you thin the crowd, surprisingly, the trail gets a little bit less hilly, a little more open, and a little more scenic. Of course, sometimes things are less scenic. For example, this is hiking underneath an interstate. That's actually the Appalachian Trail, believe it or not. Yes. It's also a beautiful place to camp if you really are on a pinch and it's really raining. You find all sorts of fun hobo things to do when you're on the trail. Then, of course, you have places like this. This is I think anybody's seen this from a highway. This is a power line area where they've kind of cut out a whole bunch of trees in between and run power lines. There's lots of times you get to walk in and around power lines, more than my fair share, but you definitely continue that as you go along the Appalachian Trail. One thing I've noticed as the crowd has thinned is the places to sleep, whether you're tenting or this is an actual shelter, they're much better managed. People up north, for whatever reason, they tend to celebrate the whole hiker concept a little bit more. Maybe there's a little more funds. I don't know, but this is a beautiful shelter. There's even a swing that you can like recline on and everything like to the left of this one. And as I've thinned the crowd, I've started to see things like Pennsylvania with all of its ominous rocks and things to just walk over. This is a morning in Pennsylvania about, 6:20 a.m. It's just this nice, beautiful, misty morning and those wonderful foot-breaking rocks you get to walk over. Not everybody's happy about the hikers, I will admit, as this is a sign that was literally placed right next to an encampment where hikers were supposed to sleep in Port Clinton. Fortunately, I did not sleep in Port Clinton. And as you continue north, you also see more water. If you're below 2,000 feet, you're going to see more glacial lakes and things of that nature. This is a lake in New Jersey. And this is a beautiful view at only 1,000 feet. Yes, you can only climb up 1,000 feet and still see angelic views like this one. Finally, you get to see more open fields. This looks like it could be mowed. This looks like it has a few fallen trees, but it really is just kind of like somebody's hill that has a few trees interspersed. This could be somebody's backyard. You don't see that as much in the South. Now, there are also a few other animals, a few other scary creatures, not just snakes that you'll see. And for that, I'd like to give you an example of what I'm talking about. What you're seeing here is a legit rattlesnake. So the question is, should I pull a Steve Irwin? I'm gonna try to piss it off. No, I'm really not gonna try to piss it off. Because I like my life. But yeah, that's a rattlesnake. I only saw one. I'm out. Boy, don't know what that is. I think it wants me to mess with it. Take a closer look here. See the gut. Some kind of void. Something else. That must be its come pet me call. Let's go find out. Boy. This is what we call the furious North American bunny rabbit. It's a very, very vicious creature, you see. Don't be confused. He will, in many ways, tear out your heart with his cute, cuddly little ears. Look at that bunny rabbit. Just staring at me. Just nibbling. Just nibbling. Nibble, 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 nibble. So as you can see, there's all sorts of interesting creatures as well along the trail. I've had so many enjoyable experiences, so many interesting paths, people, pod creatures to see. You have no idea how enjoyable this experience has been for me. It's really been life-changing. So I ask myself what the future holds. I can tell you immediately, the future holds the fact that I still have another 4 or 5 states to go through. I still have another 700 miles to trek. And eventually I'll reach the final mountain. It's the hardest mountain on the Appalachian Trail. It's called Katahdin. It's basically a pure rock face for 5 miles up and 5 miles down. Even good hikers, it takes them about 10 hours to do the whole thing. An average hiker can do a normal pace, about 2 or 3 miles per hour. This is about a 1 mile an hour pace. So that's what I have to look forward to eventually. But for now, I don't know. All I can think is I'm going to enjoy the rest of the 700 miles. I'm enjoying the experience of just being in my own thoughts, being in my own head, and everything else that comes along with that. And I don't know what's going to happen in my life afterwards. I may continue my career. I may do something new. Whatever happens, I know that this experience has definitely prepared me for anything that can come down the pipeline. At this point, I'd like to open for a few minutes for any Q&A sessions about any of the pictures and experiences that I've gone through over the last 3 months. Please feel free to unmute yourselves.
I have a question.
Yes, Asha.
What is your trail name, please?
Fiddy, Fiddy, and that's because my pack weight, once Brenda had to go back down to Virginia Beach with full food and water, was around 50 pounds, which is obnoxious. So I can tell you that personally had about 50 pounds of weight, which is a lot. As a matter of fact, the average person is only going to have somewhere around 25 to 30 pounds. So I definitely had more than my fair share.
It sounds like it. Thank you.
I think we have time for one or two more. I know I'm going to be, sorry, what do you say, Asha?
Yeah, I said it does sound rather heavy, and thank you.
Oh, yes. Brenda's trail name is Getaway Car because she has been driving my car around recently as I've been slack packing. So everybody calls her Getaway Car. Does anybody else have any other questions?
What did you find you could get rid of to get your pack weight down?
Mostly food. Food is the one that everybody likes to overpack. So you only need 3 days of food, and everybody says this is 3 days of food. No, that's like in reality it's like 6 or 7. That's number one, and number two is clothes. I only need about half the clothes I actually brought for sure. And a couple other things here and there. Like for example, you don't need a lot of winter clothes in the summer. I think Donna might.
I have a question.
Yes, Donna.
It's like a twofold question. How do you know when you're staying on track of the trail and you're not veering off in the wrong direction? Do they have like little indicators to show you that you're in a path, or little arrows to show you that to keep straight or turn or whatever?
They don't have, every once in a blue moon, they will have an arrow, but usually they have these things called white blazes. So as you go, and sometimes you see a white blaze every 300 feet. Sometimes you see it every 20 feet if it's a really confusing location. Or for example, if you have to climb up a rock face, you're going to see white blaze, kind of guide you up the rocks. So you see the white blazes that guide and help. Every now and then you will see an arrow or a sign that points you some way. If you really get lost, they have this thing called gut hook. For example, I did some night hiking about 3 nights ago where I had a headlamp and there were so many fallen trees that there was no visible path. Even if I could not see a white blaze anywhere, or there was a white blaze, but it was basically taking me full into a bunch of bush. So I actually had to use gut hook and bushwhack for 5 minutes to find a way through a bunch of plants so I could get to my actual trail. And what was the other part of your question, Donna?
And then the second part is how long did you go between without having to take a bath or shower?
The longest I've gone is about 6 days. Now, on average, I would say it's about 3 or 4, but it depends. In the summer, you can find a lot of creeks where you can just jump into a bath. But after that first week or two, you get 3 days in, you're like, oh, I smell. We all smell. You don't really care anymore. Yeah, but I would say my record is about 6 days. That's my and sometimes when you get a shower, it's not a hot shower at all. It's like, here's a garden hose on the end of like a spigot, and there's no warm part of a garden hose. It's just a garden hose with some basic like dish soap that you put on your skin, and you put that dish soap in your hair, and you're just like that's a very enjoyable shower on the Appalachian Trail. So, and sometimes you get to do that in April at 6,000 feet. I think Zach or Andrew, anybody else have any other questions? Tammy, Sandeep, Asha, yes, you have another question?
Did you have to use topo maps at all, or that was just negated by all of the white blazes?
Because of the Gut Hook app, which basically has an offline GPS, you can be in airplane mode and that GPS works perfectly.
Okay.
You really don't have to use a lot of topological maps. Most things can be used with smart phones now, where almost any trail in the world will have enough markings anywhere where you can effectively use that even with no connection whatsoever. There's enough GPS connection with any tower where you can use a lot of those instead. So there are people who definitely use topological maps. They are by far in the minority right now. All right, and that from the timer says that I'm at least 7 minutes over. I have no idea, but Luke Dobbs would know better than I would. So I would like to wrap it up now and pass it back to our Toastmaster of the evening, Donna James.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robert Riggs. I don't know if anybody else's facial expression is quite like mine. But the one thing I don't do is I don't do snakes. I don't do creepy crawlies. I don't do anything that I've never seen before. I like mountains when I'm in big cities like Arizona, Pagosa Springs, Colorado. But I don't want to be up in the mountains somewhere where I have to lay down and find something crawling up my leg or something like that. That's going to really just freak me out. So I don't think I could do that trail. But I do give you your kudos and much applause for taking this action to doing that. And if I had to go 6 days without a bath, I would have to tell everybody, stand clear, stand clear. So thank you for so much, Robert. Can we have the timer set the clock for 1 minute to allow for evaluations? Again, if you want to send Robert a private evaluation, you can do so at this time.
For the record, the longest I've heard of anybody else going without a bath was about 2.5 weeks. It can be done. Or what they do is they don't have a full shower. They just go to the creek and wash their pits, wash their private bits, and that's it. So
Yeah, there's a name for that.
We don't want to know. That's just gross to not shower for 2 weeks. Jesus.
But when you're out in the woods, other animals aren't showering. Other mammals and birds, unless you're a fish, nobody's going to shower.
I'd be too worried about leeches and stuff like that. No, sir. Ugh.
I've yet to run across any leeches, but I have heard of some.
All right, it's been 1 minute. Fingers off of your keyboards, please. Thanks, everyone. We have completed the first portion of today's session. We're going to now call for a break, which is indicated on our agenda. So let's take a 10-minute break. It is currently 7:48 p.m. Eastern Time. We will return back at 7:58. So enjoy your break, everyone.
Yeah, if there's one thing that I would describe about the towns in the Appalachian Trail is Americana. I don't know whoever came up with the phrase Americana, but that is essentially every single town on the Appalachian Trail. They're very small, almost every single one has an ice cream shop or some form of local brewery, some form of trail community. But yeah, that's a lot of good food you'll find in those kinds of places.
You were
Hey,
talking about
from your 50 pounds in your backpack, how many pounds of that was toilet paper?
Maybe like a 1/4 pound at best when it's heaviest. Really not a lot. The answer to your question is, you take out the little tube thing in the toilet paper roll, and you can just flatten that and put it into like a plastic bag. And you don't have to use like a whole roll every time, obviously. So, or you can go to a location where you have like a shelter. They have privies there. Privy might have toilet paper, might not, but privies are an option. Or if you ever get a chance to go into town, you can obviously use a bathroom there. So it depends on where you're going. A lot of times you're in nature calls, and I would say a roll of toilet paper probably lasts me at least 2 weeks.
So like Alexander the Great and like in the military some time ago, last century, and when I backpacked, actually, did you have to go bury it? Like, did you bring a shovel so you could bury it 100 yards away from water?
So,
100 feet, 100 yards.
Usually you're never really near water when you have to do those kinds of things. But usually it's just like somewhere, a random location on the trail. But I would say you do want to bury it off trail. It's called a trowel. Some people just use a
Oh,
stick,
that's right.
but I have a trowel that also has a knife's edge on it, and it has like a little saw, so it actually serves three purposes.
Mhm.
So you can do that. You do want to bury it at least 6 inches deep. Personally, I've gotten to the point now where I've done
At least
it's been so long
supposed
that
to
I'm
be
just like, let me get 2 inches, and then put whatever dirt I can on top of it and call it a day. So
That works.
It's supposed to be.
yeah. Some people are very, very, very particular about the need to like dig a 6-inch hole, and some people are so crazy they because they don't want to affect the environment that they pack out their toilet paper,
You're supposed to do
like
that.
their used toilet paper. I think that's disgusting, but my toilet paper is paper. It's not like wipes or anything like that. It came from the ground. It's going to go back in the ground. It's going to
It
decompose
decomposes
easily.
slowly.
This whole
Absolutely.
conversation is just nasty.
You're a nurse, Donna.
I don't care. I don't care. I've seen it all as a nurse,
Supposed to give the right
but just this conversation will have me itching and scratching all night long.
supposed to give the right information out.
Sorry, you're talking to a nature girl here from.
Yeah, my nickname would be Itchy and Scratchy.
Yeah, it's
Good.
that is something that happens on the trail is you get so comfortable with these kinds of things that people just make jokes about them all the time. So
So how much bug repellent did you have to carry? And did you carry it? And if not, did you regret not having it?
so in the beginning, I covered my clothes in something called permethrin.
Mhm.
And in the beginning, especially in April, I really didn't have to because there weren't a lot of bugs around. So permethrin, like you're going to find ants any time of year, but you're not going to find mosquitoes or gnats or any flies a lot in April, especially in the mountains. So you don't need it then, but when you get to the summer months like now, yes, you need it. I really started using it once I hit New Jersey.
Mhm.
I carried it the whole time, but permethrin is something that you soak your clothes in for about 3 or 4 hours. And when a tick lands on your body and permethrin's on your clothes, it literally stays there for 2 seconds and falls off and dies. So permethrin it lasts about a month. It lasts about, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 10 washes. So you can wash your clothes with permethrin and it'll still be in there for like a month.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then as for the other stuff, DEET is always the classic. And then I use 30% DEET on my legs and my arms, especially now. So I would say that combination in particular will prevent most bugs. I have had to pull ticks off of my legs and a couple off of my back and side. So ticks are not as vicious and annoying as mosquitoes. If there was a way that I could click a button and like every mosquito would explode in the earth, I would press that button every day. So mosquitoes are annoying.
You would get a Nobel Prize from now until
Yeah.
future centuries if you did that.
The mosquitoes are a special, like whoever, like if you ever think of your enemies and like you just want to punish them furiously for the rest of their lives, just stick them in a room with mosquitoes and no escape. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoy every single time I get one and I slap one and I'm just like the blood from the mosquito. It's like not my blood, but it's like, oh, it's so enjoyable once you just like kill mosquitoes. Like
And
the
it's
best part
nice
of your
when you
day.
see them before they can bite you. When they first touch down and there's no blood.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
So Luke, you're an outdoorsy person. What about you, Lee, and you, Zach?
I was going to ask Robert because the power lines remind me of a specific section on the Triple Crown area just below Troutville. Do you remember peak? It got so close to the power lines. If you stuck your arms up, you could feel it. Like my hair stood on end. You just hear the buzzing. It was pretty creepy.
Where's Troutville again?
Just north of Roanoke, Virginia.
Okay, so I actually skipped over most of Virginia, so I haven't gone through that section yet. Because I'm going to do Virginia on the back end.
Which section?
Troutville, it's above Roanoke.
The Triple Crown area.
Is that where
So
Dragon's Tooth is?
Yes.
I've been there.
So we went there when? Oh, you did. Okay. So, but I have been in places in Pennsylvania where you literally walk across and you just hear.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like maybe 10 feet above your head, and you're just like, man, like I wonder what person thought it'd be a great idea to go up and just touch that just for fun. So I'm sure there's somebody who decided, but yeah, it's
Oh, it's happened
Yeah.
in Maryland and in Pennsylvania.
yeah.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
I guess those people got sent to Florida, right? That's where Florida man came from.
Mm.
No, we ship them out west.
Very nice. To California, right?
Yep, right there where the wildfires are burning.
Yeah.
So
Hey, no, I'm a Florida man.
We'll try not to hold that against you.
So it's in the beginning I was like, hey, I'm going across like a power line. I've never done this before. I've always wanted to. And then after like the third or fourth one, you're like, okay, I'm doing this again. And by like the 50th one, you're just like, does everything have to have every day I have to go across a power line? So I've crossed at least like, I don't know, at least 100 by now. So. I think everybody should do this for at least a week, just so they can see how there's another side of life. Like there's a whole part of you that's like more animalistic, and you know that also it's the same part that appreciates air conditioning and not having bugs in your house.
Having your own plate and
or-
own fork.
Oh, your own plate, your own fork, your own bed. Like all these things are things that you don't think about until you're
I found that your mind actually works differently at 3 miles per hour versus 80.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, your mind constantly thinks about random stuff. Much easier to write speeches. I'm surprised Andrew didn't hike with me. He was talking about it.
Yeah, he was supposed
It
to.
was my plan. It just didn't line up that way.
What he saying?
I would definitely encourage anybody because it's been my plan to do it really since
We
the
have
beginning
another-
of college. But
Tell them we have another tent.
oh, we have another tent. Brenda wants to butt in all the time. So we have another tent. So anybody who wants to hike, by all means,
There's no.
there's no excuse now. We got another tent, we got another sleeping bag, another sleeping pad. So if you want to take a week off and go out to the
Not even
wilderness,
the
you certainly
week.
can.
Just take a weekend.
She says just a weekend. I think a week. Yeah, you can't really get a lot out of a weekend. You can get a lot.
Yeah,
out of a
you
week.
can. I
So-
did for my first one. I was like, holy moly.
David, I would also recommend taking your family out camping for like a full few days. I think they would like it.
The Weekend Toastmasters Club, please come back to order. At this time, I will turn the meeting over to our club president, Mr. David Marshall, for a welcome and introduction that's sorely missing.
Greetings, welcome and introductions. It's been a long summer, hasn't it? A lot of busyness, a lot of things going on, but we get to come and spend time with our New Beginnings family and have a surprise for everyone. We get to go back to in-person events at ECPI. Really? That's all I get? Like, really?
Woo! Yeah! Woo!
Whoa, it's so fun. I got an email from Mr. Jim Silver at ECPI, and he said he got the green light to get back to in person. So, following this event, the officers and leaders, we're going to put our heads together and figure out when are we going to do that and make sure we got everything we need to do to get that done. And you will see you at ECPI coming soon at a theater near you. That's my major announcement, really. While I have the lecture, I'm going to talk about, well, I'll leave that for now. That's coming up next anyway. That's all I have. We have no guests, but we will soon because we did get a lot of emails asking, when are you going to go into in person? When are we going to start in person? So now we will get to see new people, sign up new members, and have a lot of fun and get off of this Zoom. At least I'm excited to. So that's all I have. I'm going to turn this back over to our Toastmaster of the evening, Toastmaster Donna James. What turn is yours?
Thank you so much to our president of New Beginnings. Now that we're back from our break, we're going to start the second portion of this meeting, which is the table topics portion. This will be led by our president, so I'm going to bounce it back to him, Mr. David Marshall. You have the floor now.
Okay, so table topics. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ooh, okay. We'll work it out. So, table topics. This is the portion of the event where I get to ask a question to everyone here, and you get to talk for 1 to 2 minutes about that subject to practice your impromptu speaking under pressure. So, who would like to go first? Now I'm going to ask for volunteers and then get to voluntold.
I'll go first.
All right. You're the first contestant. So what's the best way? This is a good one for you because this is going to be very difficult, I think, because you are not this. So what's the best way to spice up a marriage?
Thank you so much for that riveting, interesting question, Mr. David Anthony Marshall. What's the best way to spice up a marriage? I guess you'd have to define what spice is. I mean, honestly, I'm more interested in the romantic aspect, I guess. I mean, there's plenty of, I don't know, how to spice up a marriage. I guess just keep things interesting. Just surprise your significant other with, little interesting gifts and things, great compliments. I mean, like I can tell you ways to keep the flame going in a relationship, but spice up a relationship, I'm not really sure exactly how that would go. But yeah. Spice up a marriage. Just compliment one another in a very clever, somewhat PG-13 or R-rated manner. All right, back to you, David Anthony Marshall.
I like to remind you that is a marriage, so it's okay to get X-rated.
Okay.
I'm just putting it out there. I'm just putting it out there. So I'm going to say the same question, but I'm going to expect different answers because the next person, Mr. Luke Dobbs, is the same question, but after 2 years.
After 2 years. Oh, thank you, Mr. President and Table Topics Master. So after 2 years of marriage, I would say safely you are still kind of in that glow phase, the afterglow phase. It's a little bit honeymoonish. You still got your honeymoon fresh in your mind. So to spice it up, think about your honeymoon and what you did there and kick that up a notch. Make it the sequel. We got the Honeymoon Electric Boogaloo Part 2. So definitely keep your eye on the horizon. Look for ways to get away from the humdrum where you're at now, your home. Get out there, travel, and keep the honeymoon going. If not, or if anything, you can even make it a reoccurring honeymoon. Some might call it a vacation, but hey, we're spicing up the marriage, right? So we're going to call it the reoccurring honeymoon. So we're going to do a honeymoon every other year, something like that. So I would say keeping it spicy is definitely taking yourself out of your element with your significant other. And thank you for the question. Back to you, Mr. President.
All right. Great job, Luke. That's definitely a good answer for 2 years. You're still in that everything's fun and fantastic, and we're having fun after 2 years. But what happens, Miss Donna James, after 10 years?
Can you repeat the full question?
What's the best way to spice up a marriage after 10 years?
Well, first of all, you got to be married past 1. So to answer the question about the 10, I am lost. I can only imagine that the way to spice up a marriage after 10 years is to reinvent yourself. Be different. Don't be predictable. I've seen marriages where people get stuck in a routine, so they're in a rut. There is no change. The husband can guess what the wife is going to eat before she starts cooking it. He knows what the wife is going to drink before she starts drinking it. He knows what time the wife is going to go to bed. He knows what she's going to wear when she goes to bed. He knows what she's going to wear when she gets up in the morning. There is no variety. They say variety is the spice of life. So I think when you're at when you get to that 10 year, you have got to get out of the rut of just living. You can't just live or exist in a marriage. You have to live, and that means you have to be proactive in it. So I think after 10 years, you have to spice it up. You have to be different. That means you reinvent yourself, get a wig and call yourself if your name is Donna, call yourself Anna or Michelle. Get a short wig, long wig, blonde wig, red head, whatever you want to do, and reinvent yourself. That brings the spice after 10 years. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics.
All right, great, great answer. I like that. And last but not least on this topic, before I switch it over, is Andrew. What happens after 25 years?
Oh, after 25 years, it's just time to give up. I mean, but no, I'm kidding. No. If you have lasted for 25 years and you really need to find an excuse to spice up your marriage, well, that's when you have to introduce alcohol again. Oh, yeah. You got to start breaking out all the good stuff. Forget about the wine and the beer. You got to go hardcore. You got to get some Southern Comfort and some tequila, some gin. Like, it's going to take all the power in the world to make you spice things up, because in 25 years, you've already seen everything. You got to change it up somehow. What are you going to do? Yeah, no, I'm going to keep this PG. So I have a aunt and uncle who, in order to keep things interesting, they keep having a contest to see who can come up with the funniest nickname for each other. And it's an ongoing contest. They've been married now 30 years and they're still going. And it's one way to definitely keep them sharp, because they're always trying to come up with a better name than the last. And I won't share those names because the names that they have come up with are pretty raunchy, but they definitely keep it interesting, and they're still going strong 30 years later. So yeah, there's so many ways that you can really keep the marriage interesting. But again, if you've been together for that long, you probably don't even need to spice it up because it works. And that's the most important thing, that your relationship works. Back to you, David.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for that. That's good. Very good points. I took some notes from some of y'all, and I was going to stop at 25, but I think Asha can tell us and give us some insight. Well, what would happen after 40 years?
After 40 years, I was in a 20-year relationship and that didn't work out. So I can't go to myself, but I'll go to my step grandparents. And they were one of those people who, close to their 65th anniversary, were still holding hands and taking walks together. They loved to travel together, whether it was here in the US or they My grandfather studied genealogy for his own family. And at the time, my grandmother had not yet retired from teaching. He retired from teaching early. And even though it was his thing, it became a joint venture because they both went to Norway. And he looked up family, found family across the country. And they explored these newfound links together. So he had a new interest, but because of that, they both found new people to meet, new people to visit, new best friends. And whether or not you have children to share this with, basically, they made a life so full of love with each other and for each other that they were satisfied in everything large and everything small, and every second they spent together was utterly precious. And I think that's the trick to keeping love alive all those years later. Just cherishing that person whom you're with and knowing how lucky you are to be with them. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
That was a great answer. I like that one. That was good. Because that's gonna be me and my wife in 40, probably 60 years. You know, that's us right there. And that's after what, 12? It's been 10 years. So we got another 30 or 40 left. So it's gonna be a while. So we're gonna switch gears and come off of that topic. I think we got some really good answers for that. Really, really good insight. And I noticed how the progression went from, I don't know how to explain it, but it got deeper into the connection between the two, and ended up with Asha doing a fantastic job 40 years. So, Mr. Toastmaster Sandeep, tell us a little something about yourself, because you are running for New Beginning Toastmasters Vice President Education. Why should we vote for you?
Thank you, David. So is the question, I didn't get the question actually. So
you're running for
that
New
a
Beginnings.
hypothetical question?
You're running for New Beginnings Toastmasters Vice President Education.
Okay.
Why should we vote for you?
Okay. So good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. So why should you vote for me? So as the Vice President of Education, I would like to make some changes to the club, like the proceedings, and I'll try to bring in more members. I have learned a few things from Zach, who's the current Vice President of Education. Like I have followed his shadows, and I have learned from him how he's like interacting with everyone before and after the meeting, trying to set things up. So I have borrowed a few learnings from him. I would try to inculcate into my style of working. And as the Vice President of Education, maybe we can try to bring some innovative changes because maybe try to modernize it a bit, try to make it more informal. Like we're already informal, but we can try to expand it a bit more. I think once we go to in-person, like those things can be implemented, and maybe have a few more parties, and try to throw some fun into it, so that like people start coming and they don't they'll be afraid of missing out on these meetings. So I'll try to do things like this, being like mid-20s. So I'll try to bring my generation into the picture, maybe try to bring more youngsters into the club, and trying to bring a blend of youth and experience. So those are the things like I can think of right now if I'm running for the Vice President of Education. So that would be it. Back to you, David.
All right, you got my vote, Sandeep. That's fantastic. Good job. Lee, Toastmaster Lee Walker. Hey, I'm a visitor. Convince me I should visit again.
Table Talks Master, fellow Toastmasters. We have a guest at our meeting, and how am I supposed to approach the guest? I think in my roles as officer, even as just a regular general member of a Toastmasters club, I do greet guests, walk up to them and say hi, introduce myself, and I try to ask them some questions to learn about them, who they are, and what they're expecting, what they may like to get out of it, or what their interests are, what their background is, their experience. Draw some kind of something and find out something we have in common that we can talk about and have something to expand on the conversation and relationship. And most of the time, I can do that pretty well because I've been in Toastmasters a long time and I've been involved with a lot of different groups and organizations and things. And so I've been around with a lot of different things, met a lot of people. And so that helps me draw in to have some kind of relationship with somebody I meet. And, I tell them a little bit about the Toastmasters program, but just want to, just be warm and friendly and nice and just welcoming and just make them feel comfortable with the meeting and what to expect, what's going to go on in the meeting, what's going to happen, and different things going on at the meeting. Mr. Table Talks Master.
All right, thank you, Lee. Fantastic job, sir. Last but not least, I'm going to ask Tammy. Now, Tammy, this is an interesting one, and I would like for you to use your best impression. Can you do that?
I will.
Use your best impression. You're Gordon Ramsay, and we're all competing to be the best speaker. I've done a terrible job. What do you say to me, Toastmaster Ramsay?
If I was Toastmaster Ramsay, we would be bleeping out a large section of this meeting right now. So I could just sit there and say, bleep, 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 you bleep, 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 and what the bleep, bleep, bleep? Don't you know anything, you bleep, bleep, bleep? So that is pretty much how that conversation would go. And we could throw a few things around here. He might even toss the computer. I don't know. I mean, and God forbid you were in person. That's a whole nother story. But, I've seen Gordon Ramsay in Hell's Kitchen, and then I've seen him with the kids on MasterChef Junior. And it's like night and day. So yeah, he can play the dramatic part if he needs to, and he can get it all in there for the ratings. But at the end of the day, just a nice guy. He likes to educate people, and he's damn good at what he does. Back to you, Mr. Tabletop.
Great job. That's a fun question. Robert, you know what? You don't really normally do tabletoppies, but I would like to see you answer that question. You're Gordon Ramsay, and we're all competing for best speaker. I've done a terrible job. What do you say to me, Toastmaster Ramsay?
First, as Mr. Toastmaster Ramsay, I would question not only your competency as an individual, but I would also question the utmost aspect of your manhood. You see, there's no way you could have possibly given that bad of a speech unless you either intended to for some form of humorous effect, but I'm not laughing. No, I honestly think that you just gave that because you just felt that was the right thing to do. I would honestly say that you believe that could have been better, but you're not sure. And the fact that you can't recognize the difference between good and bad says that you either don't mentally have it together or you just don't know what's right and wrong as a man. I mean, as a man, you should know that there are certain things that you can or cannot say. You can't say that. I mean, honestly, I feel like I'm not talking to a man. I'm talking to a boy, a child that really, do I have to take you on my child show and be a little bit nicer and pamper you? I mean, I know in this current PC culture, millennials and everything like that, you can't just be direct. You have to dance around the subject. Am I dancing around you right now? I don't look like I'm dancing. So I'm just telling you the honest truth. That was horrible. Anything that less than you, that your expectation that could have been better, just leads me to believe that you really, really, really have no idea what you're doing.
Oh, this is a fun table topics. Everyone did a great job. We got some insight, we got some laughs, and I had a fantastic time. Everyone did a fantastic job. I'm going to turn this back over to our Toastmaster of the evening, Toastmaster Donna James, to get us to the next section of our event.
Timer's report.
Thank you so much.
Oh, can we get a
Mr.
timer's
Marshall.
report, please?
What I first want to do is I had a faux pas in the first section of our meeting was the timer's report for the speeches. So can I get that now before we shift over to the timer's report for our table topics?
Absolutely, Toastmaster of the evening, Donna James. We will begin with Lee Walker's icebreaker speech. Lee Walker came in at 7 minutes and 25 seconds. Following with our main speech of the evening, we were treated to Robert Riggs, and his speech came in at 19 minutes and 43 seconds with the talking portion, and then with including the Q&A would be 24 minutes and 46 seconds. And that concludes my speech timers report. Back to you, Toastmaster of the evening.
Thank you so much. And Luke, I'm going to bounce it back to you. I need the timer's report for the table topics, sir.
Will do. So starting off our table topics was Zach Phillips, who came in at 1 minute and 16 seconds. Donna James followed at 1 minute and 24 seconds. Andrew Bullock came in at, believe it or not, right at 2 minutes and 26 milliseconds. And then following that, double believe it or not, Asha Zar also came in at right at 2 minutes and 20 milliseconds. Sandeep Rani came in at 1 minute 45 seconds. Lee Walker at 1 minute 41 seconds. Tammy Atma at 1 minute 17 seconds. And Robert Riggs at 1 minute 24 seconds. And I did not get my own time.
It was 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Thank you, sir.
All votes are in.
Okay, all votes have been submitted. Now we're going to move over into the third portion of our meeting, which is evaluations, and that is going to be led by our general evaluator, Mr. Sandeep Sani. You have the floor, sir.
Madam Toastmaster. So first, to start off the evaluation section, I would like to call upon the first evaluator for the evening, and that would be Zach Phillips, who's evaluating Lee Walker. So over to you, Zach.
All right, thank you so much, Toastmaster Sandeep. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, especially Lee Walker. I'm evaluating his speech. First of all, you did a great job stepping up to the plate at literally the last minute. So hats off to you. You seemed very, very comfortable considering the fact that it was basically just off the cuff what you're saying, maybe. I mean, maybe you had a hip pocket speech, coalesced. But yeah, it didn't necessarily feel that way. It felt like it was just like right off the top of your head, and great, sense of comfort with that, knowing that, you're just giving it off the top of your head. And so also you had great clarity. You didn't speak with too much ahs, ums, shakiness in your voice, etc. Great volume. You could work on your tone a little bit, your vocal variety, like maybe some accentuated high points and, maybe some low points as well. Also, some gestures would be great. Your eye contact, I'm always a little bit concerned about the fact that, your camera level is kind of low to, compared to like, you're not looking right at the camera, you're looking kind of below, or you're actually looking above the camera, and so your laptop's kind of lower, so it sort of hinders your eye contact, and that's a big thing that I want to challenge you on. First of all, another thing is that your speech for Icebreaker especially should be a story about you, and while the story was about you, you could have referenced it more from your perspective and your feelings, and less about like the other people that were involved with the speech. And Robert Riggs did a great job making his speech about him and then highlighting other people along the way. And so I felt like that's another challenge that I want to do is for you is, especially with speeches like the Icebreaker and things like that, you want a lot of it to focus more on you and less on the other people. But all in all, great speech, great last minute speech. So yeah, just challenge you by adjusting your computer and then also focusing more on you especially for speeches like the Icebreaker. So back to you, Toastmaster Sandeep.
Thank you, Zach. So next, I would like to call upon the next evaluator, and that is going to be Andrew Bullock, who's going to be evaluating Robert Riggs. So over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, for the Toastmasters, and especially Robbie Riggs. Nice beard, by the way. We learned a lot about your journey on the Appalachian Trail, which is not yet complete. Now, what you did well was your vocal variety, which you've done leaps and bounds better in your vocal variety than you have in the past. I really think that being out in nature has really helped improve those vocal cords for you. So that's great. And your eye contact was phenomenal, given, the technology. It was a little difficult, with you focusing on your project, but it all worked out. Things to improve. Well, we've discussed this before, and we're going to discuss it again until you get it right. Manage your time wisely. Robbie, you got to manage your time, man. When you go over your time, you take away from other people's ability to present. Granted, you were one of only 2 speeches, but still, you have to stay within the confines of your time limit. When you go beyond, and this is actually a requirement for the project, you lessen the impact of the meaning of your speech. So you were supposed to allow more time for question and answers. You actually ran over your time because once you met your allotted time, then you allowed for questions. That's not how this works. You're supposed to allow more time for people to have questions, and you can kind of bounce off of that, and that should carry you out to the end of your time limit. So yes, work on your time management. And then last but not least, a challenge for you. And I know this is going to be a fun challenge for you because you're on the Appalachian Trail, but find a better Wi-Fi spot. Your voice and your video dropped out twice during your presentation, which made it difficult for people to stay with you and hold interest. Because when you have technological problems, people tend to focus on those as opposed to what you're saying, mainly because you sound like a robot and we couldn't understand you. And then we couldn't see the pictures that you were showing because the PowerPoint presentation dropped out or froze. So my challenge for you is whenever you have to give a speech, Do a thorough test on the connection first so that you find a stable place from which to broadcast. And that's my only recommendation. As always, I'm always impressed by your ability to come up with a speech on the move, and I look forward to hearing more of your speeches as you continue your journey. Back to you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew. So now I would like to have the timers report, please, of the evaluation.
Thank you, General Evaluator. For our evaluations, our first up was Mr. Zach Phillips, evaluating Lee Walker, and his evaluation came in at 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Afterwards, Andrew Bullock evaluated Robert Briggs, and his evaluation came at 3 minutes, even 34 milliseconds.
Okay, so now let's move on to my helper roles. So first, I would like to call upon the grammarian and R counter, Madam Toastmaster Ashazar. Could you please provide your report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. General Evaluator Sandeep. I heard one from Lee, and oh dear, I wrote another one for someone else, but that is all I had. So I'm sorry if you said it and I did not catch it. It did not hit my ears with a ping. I thought everybody used wonderful, beautiful grammar. My ears did not cringe once. Thank you very much. And I did like a lot of things that were said tonight, which I forget to bring up. I liked Donna's darn near crazy, colorful description of the thought of not showering whilst on the trail. I liked words that Robert used that I had never heard of before, and thank goodness he used them in context so we could learn what trail magic is. Shuttle service, trail days and white blaze. I liked how Andrew said something was sorely missing. I don't remember if that had to do with someone's love life. I think it may have, but it bespoke quite a wealth in those two words. And I also appreciated it was normal stuff that we hear, nothing stand out, but today I really listened to what Zach said about accentuating variety. I think, we know that we're supposed to use different varieties and different vocal tones, but using accentuate was powerful for me because it is one of the options for one of my camera edits. So that one hit home, and I think we all did a great job of using words and abstaining from filler ones. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Madam Ashazar. So next, I would like to call upon the Listen Up and Word Master for the day, Madam Toastmaster Tammy Adamo. Could you please provide your report for today?
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. For the word of the day, I'm surprised we have so many fantasts here and yet nobody used the word. So at least I haven't heard anybody. So I will go to our listen up and get right to it. So everybody unmute themselves. Who was Lee's landlord?
Not Sana. Was it Sandy? Sonda?
Craig Hayes.
No.
Which friend of Lee's was in the Virginia Beach Club?
I think that was Sonda.
Sarah.
Sarah, okay. Again with an S.
You're close. What is trail magic?
When trail angels provide creature comforts on the trail. Volunteer people.
What would Donna like to cuddle with, according to Robert?
Black snake.
A nice furry black snake.
Something pathetic.
How many mice did Dilly Dally Doyle kill?
21.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say
Five.
21.
A lot.
You want me to say?
I thought it was
Right?
25.
Was it 23?
23.
Yeah.
3.
Though by the time I got up to North Carolina, the number had gone to 37.
Oh,
And what was the vicious animal Robert saw on the trail?
His reflection.
It was a
A rabbit.
ferocious bunny rabbit.
Uh-huh.
It
What
is the rabbit. No, I'm just kidding.
What is Robert's trail name?
Biddy.
What's Brenda's trail name?
Getaway car.
Getaway. Yes,
something
car.
like
or something.
Okay, what are a couple of things from Zach's advice for spicing up a marriage?
Being
Give gifts.
romantic.
Being married.
Remember the honeymoon.
Wait, Zach's was being romantic.
The-
Remember the honeymoon.
Keep
I
things
mean, exchange some gifts or something.
Yeah, okay.
I thought that was Luke who had honeymoon.
You got it mixed
Yeah,
up.
Luke mentioned the honeymoon
was it?
more.
Yeah.
But
all my
Zach mentioned little gifts and compliments.
What did Donna say as how you should spice up marriage after 10 years?
Get a wig.
Get away, I guess.
Reinvent yourself.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yes, reinvent yourself, change things up. Okay. Andrew said if you have lasted for 25 years, you have to introduce what into your marriage?
Booze.
Gin.
Alcohol.
Hard liquor.
Hard liquor.
Alcohol.
The hard stuff.
The hard stuff.
Southern comfort.
Who did Asha use as an example of what marriage should be like after 40 years?
Ooh.
Or step grand.
Grand. Yeah.
Step
Grandparents.
grandparents.
Who is running for Vice President of Education and why should we vote for him?
Son
Sandeep.
Deep is. And
Or
because he's going to make changes.
He's going to bring youth with experience.
Modernize.
Yes.
Okay. How did Lee convince David to return as a guest? What did he do?
Form a connection.
Asking questions about them.
And being warm and friendly, nice and welcoming. All right, there you go. Not too bad, you guys.
All right.
Nice questions.
Okay, thank you, Madam Toastmaster. That was a good lesson of section. So for my general evaluations, I would like to start off with the meeting. I think it started on time, and we were well on path with the agenda. So we didn't fall out of the order or anything. And yeah, for the speeches, I think I liked Lee's speeches because like it kind of made me remember my roommates and my life experience, where I came from and everything. So I kind of liked his speech. Yeah, and the only thing which I felt was like the eye contact which he had, as Zach mentioned, like it was not into the camera. So that was the only main feedback I could give. And next to move on to Rob's speech. So that was like a wonderful presentation. Like I have never been to Appalachian Trail or something. I just heard of it. And he kind of walked us through the whole experience. And it was kind of refreshing to get to know all these things. And I'm going to take up the challenge, to go on this hiking sometime in my life. So, and yeah, so one thing, as Andrew mentioned, like the internet was weak sometimes, and that made us difficult to like focus entirely on the speech. So that would be one thing which Robert has to focus on. Next, to move on to the table topic section, I actually loved it because the thing about marriages and those things, like how you are going to like live 2 years into the marriage, 5 years into the marriage, 10 years. Those are kind of like interesting to hear from different people who are experienced in marriages. So I'm going to take bits and pieces from everyone and try to try to have a good married life. And then for the evaluations, I kind of like both Andrew's and Zach's evaluation. They were like spot on. They made the speakers realize what exactly the negatives and positives were. So I kind of like that evaluations. And then one thing which I noted was the helpers got assigned at the last moment, I think, like the R counter, grammarian, and listen up. So that could have been done a bit earlier, maybe, to have it on the agenda before earlier. Then, and one more thing was I didn't notice any theme, but yeah, so we are not having themes even in the previous meetings, I think, but we can try to have that in the next meetings. So apart from that, yeah, I think everything else was all good and we had a good meeting, I feel. So now I would like to turn the meeting back over to the president, David.
Right. Fantastic. I think it was a great meeting. I think Sandeep did a great job as first time as general evaluator. He did a great job as Toastmaster last time, Toastmaster in the evening. Sounds like he's taking on these roles really, really quickly. And I think once we get to in-person events, we're all going to have a lot more fun and get a lot more out of this. So after this event, we're going to talk with leadership and figure out when exactly we're going to do that, because we have not been in person for well over a year. So we got to get our bearings so that we get there. And as soon as we know, we will let everyone know what day. Definitely next month, we're going to meet at ECPI, more than likely room 360, where we've been meeting before. So I'm excited to get back and meet everyone in person again and get back to our speeches, where it's going to be harder, I think. Well, I guess we get more out of it because we get more hand gestures and actually speaking at a lectern and this sort of thing. So it's very different. I'm excited to get there. I don't have any other announcements other than that. So have a great evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And we will have an event next week